Have you ever felt like your life was a sitcom, but instead of a laugh track, there's just the sound of your own frustrated sighs? That's me. Hi, I'm Jack, and I live in one of those cookie-cutter suburban neighborhoods in the United States where every lawn is suspiciously green, every mailbox is perfectly aligned, and every neighbor has an opinion about your trash bins. But let me tell you about Karen. Oh, Karen. She's the president of our HOA, or as I like to call it, the Horrible Oppression Association. And Karen is not just a person. She's a lifestyle, a way of being, a force of nature that exists solely to ruin mine. Now, I'm not saying Karen is evil. That would be unfair to evil people. Evil people at least have ambition. Karen has rules. Rules about everything: how tall your grass can be, what color your curtains should be visible from the street, and whether or not your dog's bark exceeds the legally permissible decibel level. Spoiler, it always does. But her latest crusade? My packages. Yes, my innocent Amazon packages containing things like socks and overpriced gadgets I don't need but ordered at 2 a.m. because capitalism told me to. It started innocently enough, or so I thought. One day, I noticed my package wasn't on my doorstep where it should have been. Weird, right? Maybe the delivery guy left it at the wrong house? Happens all the time. But then it happened again, and again, and again, until one day, I saw her, Karen herself, marching down the street with my box tucked under her arm like it was some kind of trophy she'd won for being the world's worst neighbor. I confronted her, naturally. Karen, I said in my most diplomatic tone, which is to say, not very diplomatic at all. I think you have my package. She looked at me with that expression only Karens can muster. The one that says she's simultaneously disappointed in you and also about to call the cops on you for daring to exist in her vicinity. Oh, she said, clutching my box tighter like it contained state secrets instead of silicone spatulas. This was left out in the open on your porch. It's a safety hazard. A safety hazard? My porch is a safety hazard now? What does she think is going to happen? A squirrel uprising. I tried reasoning with her. I tried explaining that porch theft wasn't exactly rampant in our neighborhood and that maybe she could just leave my packages alone next time. She refused. It's for the good of the community, she said with all the conviction of someone who believes their HOA badge gives them diplomatic immunity. And so began my descent into madness, or as I like to call it, the Great Package War. Every time I ordered something online, I'd wait anxiously by the window like a dog waiting for its owner to come home, hoping to intercept Karen before she could swoop in like some kind of suburban vulture. But Karen was fast, too fast, and soon I found myself resorting to increasingly desperate measures. I tried putting up signs, "Do not touch my packages." She ignored them. I tried installing a camera. She waved at it smugly as she confiscated yet another box of novelty socks. Don't judge me. I even tried confronting her again. Karen, this is theft. She smiled sweetly and said, No, Jack, this is community service. Community service? What community service involves stealing someone's package and then lecturing them about how their choice of delivery method endangers society as we know it? If anything, Karen was endangering society, specifically my sanity. At this point, you might be wondering why I didn't just report her to the police or take legal action or something rational like that. And believe me, I thought about it. But here's the thing. Dealing with Karen isn't like dealing with a normal person. It's like trying to argue with a brick wall. But worse, because brick walls don't send passive-aggressive emails about how your Christmas lights violate HOA guidelines. So instead of going down the legal route, which would have required more paperwork than I'm emotionally equipped to handle, I decided to play along, to let Karen think she'd won while secretly plotting my revenge. And oh boy, did I plot. But before we get into that, which we will, I need you to understand something. This wasn't just about packages anymore. This was about principle. About standing up for myself in a world where Karens reign supreme and porch deliveries are treated like contraband. This was personal. Well, if Karen's crusade against my packages was a safety hazard, then her latest move was nothing short of a bureaucratic masterpiece. You see, Karen wasn't content with just snatching boxes off porches. No, she decided to codify her tyranny into law, or at least HOA regulations, which, in her mind, were basically the Constitution. She called it the Porch Package Safety Initiative. Sounds official, doesn't it? Like something you'd hear during a city council meeting right before everyone unanimously votes to ban fun. According to this new rule, all packages delivered to homes in our neighborhood were to be placed in the designated package area, a sad little corner near the lobby that looked like it had been decorated by someone who hated joy. It was dimly lit, smelled faintly of mildew, and had a single folding chair that I can only assume was there for Karen to sit on while she judged people for their Amazon purchases. Now, I'm no legal expert, but I'm pretty sure this wasn't enforceable. I mean, what's Karen going to do? Call the HOA police because my package dared to touch my porch? But Karen didn't need enforceability. She had passive aggressiveness and a clipboard. And let me tell you, nothing strikes fear into the heart of suburbanites quite like a clipboard wielded by someone who has memorized every line of the HOA handbook. Of course, I tried to fight back. I went to the next HOA meeting armed with logic, reason, and a PowerPoint presentation titled, Why Karen Needs to Chill. I even included pie charts, but Karen wasn't having it. She sat there with her arms crossed and her lips pursed so tightly that I'm pretty sure she could have opened a pickle jar with sheer willpower. Jack, she said in that condescending tone that made me want to scream into the void. This initiative is for the good of the community. We can't have packages cluttering porches and creating hazards. Hazards? What hazards? Was she worried someone might trip over my box of socks and sue the HOA for emotional damages? And then came the cherry on top. Karen announced that she would personally oversee package placement in the designated area. Personally oversee, as if she were some kind of package czar appointed by the president himself. She even had the audacity to suggest that residents should thank her for her service. Service? Karen wasn't serving anyone except her own need for control. At this point, I realized reasoning with Karen was like trying to teach algebra to a goldfish, pointless and exhausting. So I decided to play along. Fine, Karen wants packages in the lobby? Let's see how she likes it when every single resident starts ordering ridiculous things just to make her job harder. And oh boy, did we order. It started small boxes of canned beans, oversized teddy bears, inflatable pool toys, but quickly escalated into full-blown chaos. Someone ordered a life-sized cardboard cutout of Nicolas Cage, which Karen promptly confiscated because it was inappropriate. Another resident ordered 50 pounds of glitter. Karen claimed it was a fire hazard. By the end of the week, the designated package area looked less like a lobby and more like an episode of Hoarders. But Karen didn't crack, not yet. She marched through that lobby every day with her clipboard and her superiority complex, moving packages around like she was playing Tetris with our sanity. She even started issuing warnings for improper package placement, which is apparently a thing now. And then came the incident. It was a Saturday morning, bright and sunny, birds chirping, and I was enjoying my coffee when I heard it. The shriek. It was loud enough to wake up half the neighborhood and probably scare off every squirrel within a 5-mile radius. Curious and slightly concerned, I went outside to investigate. There she was, Karen, standing in the lobby with one hand clutching her clipboard and the other pointing at a package like it had personally insulted her family lineage. The package in question? A box labeled live crickets. Yes, someone had ordered live crickets and left them in the designated area overnight. And yes, some of those crickets had escaped. Karen was not amused. She spent the next hour chasing crickets around the lobby with a broom while yelling things like, "This is unacceptable," and "Who did this?" Meanwhile, residents gathered around like it was some kind of impromptu performance art piece titled Karen versus Nature. But even after the incident, Karen didn't back down. If anything, she doubled down on her crusade against porch packages, and against me specifically. She started sending me emails about how my deliveries were excessive and disruptive. She even threatened to fine me for violating HOA regulations. Now look, I'm not one for confrontation, okay? Maybe I am, but this was war. Karen had declared herself judge, jury, and executioner of all things package-related, and I wasn't about to let her win. So what did I do? Well, let's just say revenge is best served cold and sometimes in cardboard. Revenge, as they say, is a dish best served cold. But in my case, it was going to be delivered in a cardboard box, preferably with 2-day shipping. Karen had pushed me too far, and it was time to fight fire with fire, or, in this case, absurdity with absurdity. I wasn't just going to get even. I was going to make her regret the day she decided to mess with my Amazon Prime privileges. The plan came to me one night as I sat on my couch surrounded by the remnants of takeout containers and my shattered dignity. If Karen wanted to play package police, then I'd give her a package she'd never forget. Something that would teach her a lesson without technically breaking any laws. Because let's face it, I didn't want to end up on the evening news as local man arrested for HOA prank gone wrong. No, this had to be clever, elegant, diabolical. And then it hit me, snakes. Not real ones, of course. I'm not a monster, but the fake kind. The kind you see in prank videos where someone opens a can of peanuts and gets a face full of spring-loaded terror. It was perfect, harmless yet horrifying. The kind of thing that would haunt Karen's dreams without actually landing me in small claims court. The next morning, I got to work. Step 1, acquire the snake. After some extensive research, read, Googling realistic fake snake at 3 a.m., I found the perfect candidate, a rubber cobra so lifelike it could probably scare the scales off an actual snake. Step 2, packaging. I needed a box that looked convincingly like something Karen would want to confiscate. Enter Amazon Basics. A plain brown box with just enough tape to suggest it contains something valuable but not suspiciously overwrapped. Step 3, assembly. This was where things got interesting. Using some fishing line and a little bit of engineering ingenuity, thank you, YouTube tutorials, I rigged the snake so that it would spring out as soon as the box was opened. It was a masterpiece of amateur mechanics. Simple yet effective, like a mousetrap but for nosy neighbors. With everything ready, all that was left was to set the trap. I carefully placed the box on my porch in full view of Karen's daily patrol route and waited. And waited. And waited some more because apparently, Karen doesn't operate on a predictable schedule. She operates on spite. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, but was probably only about 45 minutes, I saw her, marching down the street with her clipboard in hand and an expression that could curdle milk at 50 paces. She spotted the box immediately, her eyes lighting up like she'd just found buried treasure, and made a beeline for my porch. I watched from behind my curtains as she bent down to inspect the package, her face scrunching up in that familiar mix of disdain and self-righteousness that only Karen could pull off. She glanced around to make sure no one was watching. Spoiler, I was absolutely watching, and then snatched up the box like she just won the HOA lottery. She carried it off to her lair, sorry office, and disappeared inside. This was it, the moment of truth. Would she open it right away? Would she wait until later? Would she somehow sense that this was a trap and foil my carefully laid plans? My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might actually break through my ribcage and join her in the office just to see what happened next. And then it came, the scream. It started as a low gasp, a sort of guttural noise that sounded like someone had just seen their credit card bill after holiday shopping, but quickly escalated into a full-blown shriek that could probably shatter glass if given half a chance. It was glorious. I peeked out from behind my curtains just in time to see Karen burst out of her office, flailing wildly as if she were being chased by an actual cobra instead of a rubber one attached to some fishing line. She stumbled into the lobby, clutching her chest like she'd just survived a near-death experience, which, in her mind, she probably had. The best part? She wasn't alone. A small crowd had gathered outside the office, residents who had undoubtedly heard the scream and come running to see what fresh HOA drama was unfolding today. They watched in stunned silence as Karen tried and failed to compose herself, pointing accusingly at the now empty box lying on her desk. There's a snake," she stammered, her voice trembling with indignation and just a hint of terror. "Someone put a snake in there." "A snake?" one of the residents asked skeptically, peering into the box like he expected it to contain Pandora's worst nightmares. "It's rubber," Karen's face turned several shades of red, first from embarrassment, then from anger as she realized she'd been pranked in front of half the neighborhood. "This is unacceptable," she bellowed, waving her clipboard around like it was some kind of magical scepter that could restore order to her chaotic kingdom. "Unacceptable?" Another resident chimed in, clearly enjoying this more than they should have been. Not that I could blame them. "You mean like stealing people's packages?" Oof, that one hit hard, and judging by the way Karen's jaw clenched so tightly, I thought her teeth might shatter. She knew it too. For once in her life, Karen didn't have a snappy comeback or an HOA regulation to hide behind. She just stood there, sputtering incoherently while everyone else tried, and failed, not to laugh at her expense. As for me, well, let's just say I stayed hidden behind my curtains until the crowd dispersed. Not because I felt guilty, I didn't, but because I didn't want anyone connecting me to the Great Snake Incident of 2025. But as I sat there sipping my coffee and basking in the glow of sweet revenge, one thing became abundantly clear. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Now, you'd think after the Great Snake Incident, Karen would take a step back, maybe reevaluate her life choices, perhaps even consider retiring her clipboard and taking up a less confrontational hobby, like knitting or birdwatching. But no, Karen wasn't the kind of person who could let something go. She wasn't just angry. She was Karen-level angry, which is a very specific type of rage that involves filing complaints, sending passive-aggressive emails, and threatening legal action over things that don't actually warrant legal action. And boy, did she escalate. The day after the incident, I woke up to find an HOA letter taped to my door, not slipped under it like a normal person would do. Taped, with industrial-strength tape that probably required a crowbar to remove. The letter was 3 pages long and written in Comic Sans, which I assume was Karen's way of adding insult to injury. "Dear Mr. Jack," it began, as if we were pen pals and not mortal enemies locked in an eternal battle over porch packages. "It has come to my attention that you have engaged in behavior unbecoming of a resident in our community." Behavior unbecoming? What was this, Victorian England? Was I supposed to apologize for offending the delicate sensibilities of the HOA aristocracy? The letter went on to accuse me of endangering the safety and emotional well-being of the community with my reckless and immature actions. Reckless? Immature? Karen was acting like I'd set off fireworks in the lobby instead of leaving a harmless rubber snake in a box. She even claimed that several residents had complained about feeling unsafe because of me. Which was funny because those same residents had been laughing their heads off during the incident. But the piece de resistance came at the end. Karen threatened to fine me $500 for violating HOA regulations and warned that further infractions could result in legal action. Legal action. Over a prank. I half expected her to show up at my door with a lawyer and a PowerPoint presentation titled, "Why Jack is Ruining Suburbia." Now, I could have responded rationally. I could have written her back, explaining that her accusations were baseless and her threats were ridiculous. But where's the fun in that? Karen wanted war, and I was more than happy to oblige. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I started researching HOA bylaws like my life depended on it. Turns out, those bylaws are full of loopholes. Loopholes that Karen probably didn't expect anyone to exploit, but which I fully intended to use against her. For example, did you know there's no rule against decorating your lawn with inflatable dinosaurs? Or planting an entire garden of plastic flamingos? Or hosting weekly karaoke nights on your porch as long as they don't exceed 85 decibels? Well, now you do, and so did Karen. The first strike came on Monday morning when Karen woke up to find a 10-foot inflatable T-Rex standing proudly on my front lawn. Its tiny arms were clutching a sign that read, "Package Protector." Subtle? No. Effective? Absolutely. Karen wasn't amused. She marched over to my house faster than I thought humanly possible for someone who wears orthopedic shoes and demanded I take it down immediately. "This is against HOA regulations," she screeched, waving her clipboard around like it was some kind of magical spellbook. "Actually," I said with my best innocent smile, "there's no rule against lawn decorations as long as they're not obstructing traffic or causing structural damage." She sputtered incoherently for a moment before storming off to consult her HOA handbook, which, by the way, she carries everywhere like it's her personal Bible. The next strike came later that week when I hosted the first ever porch karaoke night. Residents were invited to sing their hearts out while enjoying complimentary snacks and beverages, all served from my porch, which Karen had so graciously deemed a designated community area. The highlight of the evening was when one of my neighbors performed "I Will Survive" while staring directly at Karen's house. Karen tried shutting us down, of course. She showed up halfway through the event with her clipboard and an expression that could curdle milk. "This is disruptive," she yelled over someone's off-key rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody. "You're disturbing the peace." "Actually," I said again, because at this point, saying "actually" had become my favorite hobby. The bylaws state that noise levels under 85 decibels are permissible until 10 p.m. Then I handed her a decibel meter just to rub it in. She left after that, but not before muttering something about how she was going to report me to the HOA board. Joke's on her. Half the board members were at karaoke night singing backup vocals. But the final strike, the one that truly broke Karen, came when I decided to take advantage of another overlooked bylaw: temporary art installations. According to HOA rules, residents are allowed to display art installations on their property for up to 30 days as long as they're deemed non-offensive. So naturally, I commissioned an artist friend to create a life-size statue of Karen holding her clipboard like Lady Justice, but with far more judgmental energy. The statue was unveiled on Saturday morning during what I called Community Appreciation Day. Residents gathered around to admire its craftsmanship while snacking on free donuts and coffee, all provided by yours truly, because nothing says petty revenge like hospitality. Karen showed up halfway through the event, because of course she did, and nearly exploded when she saw herself immortalized in bronze, or rather papier-mâché painted gold, because bronze was out of my budget. She demanded I take it down immediately, but once again, I reminded her that temporary art installations were perfectly legal under HOA regulations. She spent the rest of the day sulking in her office while residents took selfies with the statue and posted them online with captions like, "Our fearless leader," and "All hail Queen Karen." By Monday morning, it had gone viral, and not in the way Karen would have wanted. To say she was furious would be an understatement. She called an emergency HOA meeting where she tried and failed to convince everyone that I was single-handedly destroying the neighborhood's reputation. But instead of siding with her, most residents just laughed, and some even suggested making Community Appreciation Day an annual event. And that's when it hit me. Karen might have a clipboard and an inflated sense of authority, but she didn't have what really mattered: support from the community. Because at the end of the day, people don't want rules. They want connection. And if connection comes in the form of inflatable dinosaurs and karaoke nights, well, who am I to argue? After the statue debacle, you'd think Karen would finally wave the white flag and accept defeat. But no, Karen doesn't surrender. She doubles down. She called yet another emergency HOA meeting, this time with an official agenda titled "Restoring Order to Our Community." I don't know what she thought was out of order, unless by order she meant Karen's ability to micromanage everyone's lives. I showed up to the meeting, of course, not because I wanted to, but because I knew Karen would use my absence as proof that I was a menace to society. The room was packed with residents, most of whom were there for the free snacks provided by Karen, who clearly thought bribery would win them over. She stood at the front of the room like a dictator addressing her loyal subjects, clipboard in hand and a PowerPoint presentation ready to go. The first slide? A picture of my inflatable T-Rex with the caption "Community Disruption." The second slide? A blurry photo of my porch karaoke night with the words "Noise Pollution" in bold red letters. And the third slide? The piece de resistance. A close-up of the papier-mâché Karen statue with "Mockery of Leadership" written underneath. She went on for 20 minutes about how my antics were ruining the neighborhood's reputation and undermining her authority as HOA president. She even tried quoting bylaws that didn't exist. Something about respecting community leaders and prohibiting inflatable reptiles. By the time she finished, half the room was asleep and the other half was trying not to laugh. When it was finally my turn to speak, I kept it short and sweet. "Karen," I said, standing up and addressing her directly. "If you spent half as much time building community as you do enforcing pointless rules, maybe people wouldn't need inflatable dinosaurs and karaoke nights to feel connected." The room erupted into applause. Karen looked like she'd just swallowed a lemon whole. But here's the thing. Karen wasn't wrong about one thing. The neighborhood did have a reputation problem. Not because of me or my shenanigans, but because of her. People were tired of living under her iron fist disguised as a clipboard. They wanted change. And change was exactly what they got. 2 weeks later, during the annual HOA election, Karen lost her position as president by a landslide vote. Turns out, people don't appreciate being fined for having mismatched patio furniture or being told their garden gnomes are too whimsical. Her replacement? A retired teacher named Susan who promised to focus on actual community building instead of petty enforcement. With Karen officially dethroned, things started looking up. The new HOA leadership repealed half the ridiculous rules Karen had implemented, including the package placement policy that started this whole mess in the first place. Residents were free to decorate their lawns however they wanted, host events without fear of fines, and, most importantly, receive their packages without interference. As for Karen, well, she didn't take her defeat gracefully. She spent the next few weeks sulking around the neighborhood like a ghost of HOA past, occasionally muttering about how things were better when there were rules. Eventually, she moved out. Rumor has it she relocated to another neighborhood where she could start fresh with a new clipboard and unsuspecting residents. And me? Let's just say life has been pretty great since Karen's reign ended. My porch is once again a safe haven for Amazon deliveries. My lawn is home to an entire family of inflatable dinosaurs. Because why stop at one? And karaoke night has become a weekly tradition that brings neighbors together over bad singing and good snacks. But here's what I learned from all this. Sometimes standing up for yourself means more than just protecting your packages. It means protecting your right to live your life without unnecessary interference from self-appointed suburban overlords. And if you can do it with a little humor and creativity along the way, even better. So if you've ever dealt with your own version of Karen, a bossy neighbor, an overzealous coworker, or anyone who thinks they're in charge when they're really just annoying, remember this, you don't have to put up with it. You can fight back with kindness, with cleverness, or even with inflatable dinosaurs if that's what it takes. And hey, if you enjoyed this story, or if you've got your own HOA horror tales, I'd love to hear about them. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends who've also been terrorized by neighborhood dictatorships, comment below with your thoughts or your favorite revenge ideas, and hit that subscribe button for more stories about suburban chaos and creative justice.